Hello, everyone.
Good
I'm
morning.
Gracie Zeiger from Iowa College Aid, and I am helping out with today's Back on Track session. These Back on Track sessions are a collaboration between Iowa College Aid and ICANN, and they're going to be hosting a variety of events this week to help prepare students for their post-secondary adventures. You can find the link to other sessions happening this week in the chat. Ms. Tamada just posted it. We're very happy to have you here and join us today with Andy Baumert. He is with the Iowa Association of Independent Colleges and Universities. And he is going to talk to us about the Iowa tuition grant, which is super helpful. But before we listen to him and his expert advice, just a few housekeeping items to ensure the session runs smoothly. One, this is a Zoom meeting. Anyone who wants to unmute themselves to ask questions to our presenter, do that. We do not ask that you keep yourself muted unless speaking to prevent background noise. I know I'll be muted because my dogs love to contribute when they get excited about things. This session will be recorded, and you can ask your school counselor for the recording link beginning next week. You can unmute to ask questions at a good stopping point with the presentation. You can type your questions into the chat, and me and Ms. Tamada will be looking at it. We'll try to jump in and have them answered. And without further ado, Andy, can you tell us about the Iowa tuition grant?
Sure. Good morning. Thank you, Gracie. I really appreciate the opportunity that Iowa College Aid is making for us to talk about this program. The Iowa tuition grant is something that my association is very, very proud of, that has helped tens and tens and tens and tens of thousands of Iowa students over the last 50 plus years. And so to say that I'm an advocate for it is really kind of an understatement. And maybe, Gracie, it would help if I give folks just a little bit of background on the origin of the Iowa tuition grant program so that everybody kind of has a feel for where it fits in with the broader student financial aid picture, where the money's coming from as well. My association, just so everybody knows who I'm here speaking on behalf of, the Iowa Association of Independent Colleges and Universities represents the private nonprofit colleges in Iowa. So we have 25 member institutions. A lot of folks probably couldn't name 25 private colleges in Iowa, but we're a really important sector of the higher education ecosystem, if you will. So our members are in, I think, 18 towns and cities. In Des Moines here, obviously, we're talking about institutions like Drake University, Mercy College, Grandview University. We're talking about St. Ambrose in Davenport. We're talking about Morningside and Briarcliff and St. Luke's and Sioux City. So our 25 members are all over the state. Some are specialized nursing programs like St. Luke's or Mercy or Allen. But for the most part, we're talking about four-year liberal arts institutions. And in the 1960s, our association came into being to ask the legislature to provide some financial aid for students who go to these private nonprofit colleges. And that's the origin of the Iowa tuition grant. And so in 1969, I believe it was, the legislature approved the creation of the Iowa tuition grant program. And it has continued and been funded ever since. Right as of the current fiscal year, there's just short of $49 million that's provided in funding for this particular program for students in this academic year that we've just begun. So every year, our association advocates for that funding and for some increases as time goes on. And so I have to say, and I don't take any pride in this because I didn't start this program, but this program really is envied by a lot of other states in the country because it's sustainably funded, so to speak, or maybe reliably funded, I guess I could say that. And it's very simple to understand and administer. I'm not speaking for the College Aid Commission. They administer it, and so I can make it sound easy if I want. But The Iowa tuition grant goes to the student. It doesn't go to my association, doesn't go directly to the colleges. I mean, in some states, state funding goes to the colleges and they use it as they wish. In Iowa, the funding goes to the student. It's a grant to the student. So the student applies, the student qualifies, and this is applied to essentially the financial aid package at whatever of the private schools in Iowa the student selects. So we don't tell the student where to go. The student has a lot of choices, and it's very clean. It's very simple to understand and simple to administer. And that's one of the reasons why I think the Iowa legislature and the governor's office, whoever happens to be in control of the legislature or the governor's office, support the program, because it helps students of financial need. And from a fiscal standpoint, from a taxpayer standpoint, it's a very, very good bargain for the state of Iowa in achieving its goal of making a college education available to as many students as possible. So that's kind of the origin of the program. I'll give you a few numbers right off the bat so that you know kind of what the scope of the program is. And the reason I say this is because it's not a tiny program, that affects a couple hundred students. It's close to 10,000 grants that are being made for the year that we're in right now. And the maximum grant per student is $6,800 this year. For perspective, the federal Pell Grant, I believe, is $64.95. Gracie, you may know that, but I believe it's $64.95. So the Iowa tuition grant is right on par with that. This is a need-based program. So a student and then their family have to financially qualify. And like I say, there are criteria there. You have to fill out the Fafsa, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in more detail, because the Fafsa is a really important, is a key entryway into this program. But about 10,000 students do qualify, and they receive the grant, again, a maximum of $6,800, depending on if you're full-time and some of the other criteria that are involved. And it's a grant. This is not a loan. It's a grant. If the student qualifies, they receive this money. It's not a payback issue. Just as important, part of the law that we strongly support is that the schools where students go and have these grants applied have to match the funds, have to match them 100%. So if 200 students go to a particular school and they've qualified for this amount of money in total in tuition grant for the year, the school has to match that. And even better news than that, and again, I'm an advocate. You'd expect me to be proud of my member schools. If you add up all of the institutional financial aid that our schools provide, so our 25 member schools, they provide additional aid on top of all the grants and scholarships that students bring to the campus. Add all that up, and it's more than $500 million, $500 million in financial aid every year, not loans, not federal, not state, only institutional aid that these schools bring to the table. So for a little less than $50 million investment that the state has in the Iowa tuition grant, they're leveraging $500 million plus in additional financial aid. What it really tells you is that these two things working together are of enormous benefit to students. We're so lucky in Iowa that we have so many great education options in the higher education sector. The chairman of my board calls it the educational ecosystem, the higher education ecosystem. A good way to think about it, because we've got 3 really good public regent universities. We've got 15 very good community colleges. And we've got, in my association, 25 private colleges. As it comes down to choice for students to find the school, to find the program, to find that niche where they really belong, where they can thrive in their educational career and provide them the tools that they need to have a successful life. I don't know how you get better than Iowa. And the state of Iowa is is committed to this, they provide several $100 million a year to support the Regents institutions. They provide hundreds of millions of dollars for the community colleges, and they provide 48.8 million for the tuition grant for students who go to the private colleges. I'm tremendously grateful to the folks who started the program 52 years ago, and I'm tremendously grateful to the legislature that has funded it for the current year, because it really signals a commitment to education. Gracie, those are kind of my opening soapbox comments on the tuition grant. I hope I haven't been too obvious that I'm proud of the program and a really strong advocate for it. So maybe from an introductory standpoint, Gracie, have I missed anything, or was there something you'd like to add?
No, you hit it perfectly, including the exact amount for the Pell Grant. Way to go.
Look at that.
It is
Look at the math skills on Andy this morning.
So yeah, no, that was a great introduction. Killer job.
Sure. I would take questions at whatever point they come in. I might walk through the sort of the mechanical process a bit. And the Iowa College Aid Commission is the administrative agency. So all of the detailed questions, you can easily find the answers for those at iowacollegeaid.gov. Is that right, Gracie?
Yes.
iowacollegeaid.gov. You can also go to iowatuitiongrant.org, iowatuitiongrant.org, and there's a page there that will give you all the basics of the program, and also give you the links to Iowa College Aid and to the federal sites that you would need to go. Kind of a step-by-step process for students. It starts with the Fafsa, F-A-F-S-A. Now, a lot of folks are familiar with that free application for federal student aid. This is the document that students and their family will fill out to determine their financial eligibility. And that's for the Pell Grant at the federal level. But this is also the data that Iowa College Aid uses to determine whether you're eligible for the Iowa Tuition Grant and probably some other grant programs at College Aid that I'm not directly involved in. And very briefly, the Fafsa asks you to provide a variety of financial information, mostly your income tax returns, but also some other financial aid. It's a lot simpler form than it was back in the Stone Age when I had to fill it out. So it's critical to do, but there's a lot of help to figure it out, and it's a lot simpler now than it used to be. There, in fact, at iowatuitiongrant.org, we've got a video that's available there that kind of walks you through sort of a tutorial how to fill out the FAFSA. So for a student, you'll want to do this with your parents, unless you're not a dependent, you fill it out on your own. There are various deadlines that apply. October 1 is when the FAFSA period opens up for next academic year. So for the academic year that starts in the fall of 2022, the FAFSA process opens up here in about 10 days or so, October 1. When you fill that out, provide all that information, you can do that electronically. You could also do it by PDF. If you're old like me, you might think about doing that, but most people are a lot more computer savvy, and it's much more easy to do online. So hit submit, go through that process, and then your form gets processed. Now, let me back up one step. One of the pieces of information that you put on there when you fill out the FAFSA is the names of schools that you want to receive this information so that they can determine what sort of financial aid package you're eligible for, including the Iowa Tuition Grant, including Pell, including some of the other state-funded programs that Gracie's commission works with. And you don't have to, you put on the ones that you think you're going to apply to, or maybe some that you have already applied to. You don't have to have been accepted by any of these schools in order to put the school's name down. I think you can put up to 10 schools if you're doing this online, something like that. And then later on, you can add schools as well. So it's, don't think that you're casting your decision in stone by having to pick one school to receive your information. Put on as many as you reasonably think you might apply to, and understand you can add schools later on in the process. So then you hit submit. and the federal government process evaluates your information, and they make a determination about what your expected family contribution is, EFC, expected family contribution. And so what that number is determines whether you're eligible for the Pell Grant. And then the College Student Aid Commission in Iowa takes that information and says, okay, are you eligible for the Iowa tuition grant too? Gracie, I believe that the EFC threshold in Iowa for the current academic year is $15,000. So if you, that is evaluated every year by the College Student Aid Commission. Some years it stays the same. Some years there's an adjustment. That's totally up to the commission to determine, because the commission has to decide, here's how much funding we have, here's how many students we think we're going to have, here's the maximum amount of grant. So let's do the math and figure out what the cutoff needs to be. But you'll get a report, a student aid report that comes back to you, and that student aid report goes to those schools that you listed on the form. And at that point, that's kind of where a lot of stuff starts happening at the financial aid offices at the schools that you put on the list. Now, every one of these schools, whether it's a region institution or community college or one of our private institutions, they have financial aid offices, folks that are intimately familiar with all the details of the financial aid programs and the Fafsa and everything that that particular school also brings to the table for its own scholarships, its own grants, its own work study, any of those other financial aid components that go into your total package. And so after they receive that information from the same EFC information that you get, after the school receives that, then they go to work, they figure out, okay, this student is eligible for the Iowa tuition grant, is eligible for the Pell Grant, is eligible for the Andy Baumert scholarship, whatever other scholarships they administer. And then that school then communicates directly with you, the student, and says, okay, we got your information based on what you told us. Here's what we believe the financial aid package is that we're going to be able to provide you if you decide to enroll in our school. Now, the schools themselves have some deadlines for applying that apply particularly to their homegrown financial aid programs. And there's a list of those deadlines by school at iowacollegeaid.org. They vary from one school to the next. Some are early, some are later. So that's the process. At that point, you as the student or the parent have a pretty good idea about what the cost of out of your pocket is going to be. You'll know what the grants and scholarships are going to be. You're going to know from the school how much the total cost is going to be based on the number of hours that you're taking and where, if you're going to be living on campus or off campus. They'll have all that information and they'll tell you, okay, here's what's covered by all these financial aid programs. Here's what you're going to have left to find from another source. And if it could be a federal student loan, could be a private loan, could be cash out of your pocket. But at that point, you'll know. You say, okay, here's my menu of options. I've got these 4 schools. This one has this program that I really like, and this is what my net cost is going to be, or what my out-of-pocket cost is going to be. So you'll have that information. Now, I mentioned the October 1st opening of the program of the Fafsa application window. Now that continues basically till the 1st of July. Gracie, I think it's 1st of July. You could technically, if you wanted to wait all the way to July 1 next year to fill out your application for next year, you could do that. I would not advise it. I would, if you're planning to go to school in the fall of 2022, I would get after this as soon after October 1st as you can, because the sooner you can get the Federal Department of Education processing your FAFSA and get that information to your schools, the higher up on the list, first come, first serve that you're going to be for any of those financial aid programs, particularly the ones, the native ones, the homegrown ones to those particular schools. Those are the ones where there's a variety of deadlines. And again, those are really first come, first serve. So get after that as soon as you can. Understand that each of the schools will have some individual deadlines for their own scholarship and grant programs. So I've talked a lot, kind of giving you the mechanics. Maybe I've made it seem a little more complicated than it is, but the first thing you need to do after October 1, start with the FAFSA. That's the door you have to walk through first. So Gracie, I'll stop there. If you want to add something to that or take questions, that would be great.
Well, if you guys have any questions, feel free to unmute yourselves or put them in the chat. But yeah, I mean, all I really want to add is just the emphasis of getting that done early. When we look at the regents, many of their priority deadlines. So again, you're talking about that like access to the best scholarships, the most amount of money to fund your college education is December 1st. So if you are waiting until July, you're going to miss out on the best opportunities to like minimize your college debt 100%.
If you go to Iowa College Aid, you can find a list of the deadlines just like that, every school, every deadline that applies. So no reason to be in any doubt about what the deadlines are for the schools that you may be interested in. But again, get after it as soon as October 1 as you can.
Absolutely. And to do another Iowa College Aid plug, if you do have questions and need help, we have virtual assistants both through our coaches, like we have a texting coach, and then you can request sessions with somebody too. And you can find that information on our website at iowacollegeaid.gov.
I might mention something that I should have mentioned because maybe it was too obvious. For the Iowa Tuition Grant Program, it's the Iowa Tuition Grant Program. You do have to be a resident of Iowa in order to qualify for this. This is not a program that students from outside of Iowa are eligible for. This is funded by Iowa taxpayers for the benefit of Iowa students. And so if there's a question about residency, to make it real simple, the Iowa College Aid Commission uses the same criteria for determining residency as the Regents schools do. So it's simple from that standpoint. That information is also available at iowacollegeaid.gov. So if you one of the first thresholds you have to get past, you have to have been in Iowa for 12 months prior to the term of school that you're applying for. There are a variety of other criteria about establishing residency, but that's the first threshold to get over. So again, Iowa Tuition Grant Program, it's for Iowa students.
Awesome. It doesn't look like we have any questions as of yet, but I think I'll throw out a clarifying question. Sure. To get the Iowa tuition grant, do you just complete the FAFSA or do you also have to complete the Iowa financial aid application?
There is an Iowa financial aid application. I think it's 10 questions, Gracie, something like that. It's takes close to nothing of your time. So yeah, you're right. And that would, good point, because the Iowa Tuition Grant Program, it's the biggest grant program that College Aid administers, but it's not the only one. There are other grant programs that an Iowa student might be eligible for as well, that also might depend on your residency, obviously, but also there may be some other criteria if it's targeted to a specific academic area, if it's a nursing grant, or if it's one that
well, we may have lost the audio. So Andy, if you can hear us, we're not able to hear you, but John just jumped in. He said, my child is a junior this year. Would I wait until October 1st, 2022 to begin filing? And absolutely. You would apply for the FAFSA the fall of his senior year, ideally. So great question, John. Shirley asked, where do I find Iowa financial aid app website? So couple ways. You can find it by going to our website at iowacollegeaid.gov, or when you complete the FAFSA, there will be a little link that will say, do you want to continue on to the Iowa financial aid application? And so you would just click on that. And like Andy said, it's just like 10 questions. Heather S., are there grant programs for students interested in Iowa State University? Yes, 100%. If you haven't gone to their financial aid website yet, I encourage it. Iowa State, like a lot of our regions, they have a whole separate website for where you can see all the scholarships and grants. And it looks like we have Andy back.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I had a computer glitch on this end. The where I live, they're doing where I live, they're doing a lot of underground power work right now, and so I hope I don't get cut off again. I'm sorry about that.
No, it's totally fine. And it came up at a perfect time. People had some questions, so we just answered those.
Very good.
And then Carla added, is there a list website of grant programs available? And yes, kind of. There's our site that will list all of the like state funded ones. But whatever colleges your student applies to, they'll likely have their own financial aid website that will tell you all the scholarships and grants unique to that college.
Right.
And with that, I'll turn it to you, Andy.
Yeah, our member schools and the regions and the community colleges all have dedicated full-time financial aid offices and staff. And that's a good point, because when you get your student aid report after your Fafsa has been processed, and you get your report back from your member schools, and they tell you what you'll be eligible for. When you have questions, my advice, first place to go is to the financial aid office at that school, because they're the ones that are actually doing the calculations about your eligibility under the criteria for all those other programs. So I would start there. They'll be delighted to answer your questions. I would say that when they send you that information, it is an estimate. It's a very good estimate, but when they send you that package, that financial aid package, they have to estimate it, particularly for the Iowa Tuition Grant Program, because the Iowa Tuition Grant Program is funded 1 year at a time. So for the 22-23 academic year, so a year from now, that academic year, the funding for that academic year for the Iowa Tuition Grant has to be approved by the legislature and the governor this upcoming session. So the session between January and May, basically. So if you filled out your FAFSA, they will, and you get your EFC back, and College A sends you back your estimate. They're making an estimate basically based on the level of funding that was available for the year that they're in. That could be adjusted a little bit up and down, depending on what exactly happens in the legislature. Our association is always there to make sure that the legislature funds it at the same level or a bit higher, and that's typically been the case. So when they give you that estimate, it's a pretty darn good estimate, but it is an estimate, so it might be adjusted a little bit. Back to my original point, when you have questions about that financial aid package that you get from the school, go back to the school. There'll be contact information for their financial aid office, and start there, because that's where 99% of the answers for you are going to be.
Thank you so much, Andy. Still don't seem to have any questions. You mentioned that the Iowa Tuition Grant goes straight to the students. So what does that process look like?
Well, basically, the financial aid office at the individual school opens an account for that student. Here's your student account. Here's the, they know what the tuition is that you're going to owe based on the number of credit hours you're taking. They're going to know what your residence hall bills are and all that stuff. So the school has to be approved by the College Aid Commission to participate in the Iowa Tuition Grant Program, essentially to make their students eligible to have these Iowa Tuition Grant funds applied to their bill. So that's essentially how it works. the college communicates to the Iowa College Aid Commission, yes, here's our application to be eligible for the program. Here are all the students who've applied. Here are the ones that are qualified. And here's the amount of funding that they're qualified for. The Iowa College Aid Commission then sends that money to that student's account at the school to be applied only to that student's account. I mean, the money doesn't go to the school and they put it in a big general fund and they spend it whatever they want. No, if it's Andy Baumert's student account and he qualified, it goes to Andy Baumert's account and no place else. And important also to understand that this is a tuition-based program. So it's tuition and fees costs that are eligible to be paid for by the Iowa tuition grant. You can't, if you've got participation fee to be on the football program or something like that, that's not for the Iowa tuition grant, and doesn't apply to your residence hall bill. The school, when they put the package together, they're going to make sure that your tuition grant goes to your tuition and academic fees component of your student account.
Is there any advice you have for students and families who are interested in getting the tuition grant?
Yeah, I'd encourage you to go to two things really. Go to iowatuitiongrant.org. There is a tutorial there about the Fafsa. Now, I and my siblings were first generation college going. This was all pretty new to me. In my tiny rural high school in Nebraska, guidance counseling wasn't really a thing. So I had to kind of find this stuff out for myself. This is before computers, all that stuff. It is so much easier to get this information, to find out if you qualify. And there are so many people that are interested in making you successful and helping you find out what you are qualified for and how you can finance your college education. So go to iowatuitiongrant.org. There'll be a tutorial there for the FAFSA. There'll be links to the FAFSA form itself. And when you go there, there's all kinds of how-to pieces of information, the same way at Iowa College Aid. Lots of how-to clicks so you can walk through that and figure out, okay, let's take this one step at a time. If I'm not familiar with it, if I'm uncomfortable dealing with these sorts of things, just take it one little bite at a time. But walk through that door. There's lots of places you can get off the path. That's easy to do, but just walk through the door first and find out. I guess I would say, aspire, particularly if your family was like mine and you didn't have, you couldn't go to somebody in your family and say, how do I go to college? How do I apply for financial aid? There's places and people like Gracie and her colleagues at the College Aid Commission, and like anybody at the financial aid office at any of our 25 private schools, they would be delighted to get a call from you, to get an email from you, and they will walk through this thing one step at a time with you and hold your hand. So don't be intimidated, don't be afraid of the process. Just walk through it one step at a time, take one bite at a time, and then figure out, okay, when I'm going to make a decision about going to college, now I really have some factual information. I've got it in my head that I can't afford college. Well, you don't know that until you know how much other people are willing to help you. And you won't know that until you fill out the FAFSA. So get that information first. Don't be afraid, walk through the door and get the process started. You can always opt out of the system. And I might, unless we have a pending question, I might just put in a word for the members of my association. I represent the private nonprofit part of the higher education ecosystem, and folks from the community colleges of the regions would advocate for their institutions as well. The schools that are in my association are small. I think the largest of our members has about 4,000 students. You're going to find a lot of my member schools that are in the 1,000 to 1,500 enrollment category. This is one of the key benefits for having a program like the Iowa Tuition Grant Program that allows students some financial resources to take advantage of those choices that are there in that ecosystem. Because not every student learns well in the same environment. At one of the smaller schools, you're probably going to have, a dozen to 15 students in your class. Could be a few more, could be a few less, but you're going to be in a very approachable sort of an academic setting. When I first started a number of years ago working for the association, I'd have meetings on the campuses and I'd talk to the students who had received an Iowa tuition grant, and we just have general conversation. Well, why did you pick this school? Why did you, what do you like about being here? And I heard the first couple of times I heard this, I said, well, I can always go in and see my professor. I can always go in and see my advisor. Now that was different from my experience in a big university in another state. So I said, okay, maybe. And then I would hear students say, and then, this particular professor, when I'm not at class for some reason, they email me or they call me to find out if I'm okay. Why did I miss class? And I said, nothing in my experience is similar to that. But I kept hearing it, on one campus after another. And it turns out, yeah, that actually happens when you're in a small setting. And when you have a small campus, a very approachable sized campus, that's the kind of interaction that is possible. And so again, not every student learns as well in the same environment. But if that's the kind of environment where you think you would thrive, the Iowa legislature and the Iowa governor and Iowa's taxpayers want you to be able to have access to that kind of environment so that you're successful. The state of Iowa doesn't want to cram you down one road or down another road. We've got these options. We have this menu of options, and the state of Iowa wants to help you take advantage of whichever one of those options is the best learning environment for you. So to kind of run back to your earlier question, Gracie, if you're thinking about college, if you're thinking about financial aid, think about that. Your college experience doesn't have to be all one thing. It doesn't have to be a very large university out of state. It doesn't have to be this, that, or the other. You've got lots of options for scale and for extracurriculars and for the size of classrooms, your academic programs. A lot of students find that they were really active in sports in high school, and they got a lot of value out of that. They learned about themselves a great deal. They learned how to be part of a team. They learned how to accept coaching, and it was a real growth opportunity for them in high school. They want to continue that. But, are you going to be able to continue that at a really big Division I school? You may not have any interest, even if that's really not in the cards. But thousands and thousands of Iowa students do continue a college athletic career at the 25 private schools that are part of my association. And they have a great experience doing that. They get to participate in this sport that they love, and they learn so much about themselves and others. The kind of team experience that you have in sports is kind of tough to get in other ways. And so if you want to continue that, you've got a great chance. You've got 25 more opportunities to continue that particular sport. Or maybe it's something in the arts. You were involved in drama or speech or debate or music or choral programs in high school. You've got 25 more opportunities to do just that. And so keep your options open and understand you've got a lot of options. This is a very long menu that you have available. and the taxpayers of Iowa want to help you pay for it, and find out if you're financially eligible. So I know I'm on my soapbox, and probably you expect me to be that, but Iowa is such a wonderful state from a higher education standpoint, that it's really difficult to beat. And so, man, don't leave these opportunities on the table. Don't leave this money on the table. The Iowa tuition grant is $6,800 for the current academic year, $6,800. And if you qualify for the Iowa tuition grant, there's a chance you're going to qualify for the Pell Grant. I'd say it the other way. If you do qualify for the Pell Grant, you will qualify for the Iowa tuition grant. And a big majority of Iowa tuition grant recipients are also eligible for Pell. Not all, but a lot. And so there you got $12,000, $13,000, a little over $13,000 in grant money right off the top. And then you might be eligible for other grants, financial aid from the school itself. So again, don't leave the options on the table. Don't leave the money on the table.
100% agree. As we're kind of nearing the end of the session, if you have any final questions, please do feel free to now type them in the chat. But just kind of jumping off of like what you said, Andy, I went to a small private college in Iowa, Central College, go Dutch. And I was also the recipient of the Iowa tuition grant, which was a huge help in like achieving my collegiate goals. And like through that, like I got to do a variety of things and explore new facets of my self and my personality. I started off as a math major and ended up with an and ended up with an anthropology degree. I studied abroad in China. I even took voice lessons, which did not help. So I will not torture you guys with my singing voice. But absolutely, the tuition grant can go a long way to supporting whatever your goals are, whether it's a small private, one of our community colleges, the Regents. Can't recommend it more highly enough.
I think of it sometimes like venture capital. Mm-hmm. The state of Iowa, in a way, is interested in investing venture capital in you as the student. The state of Iowa wants successful citizens that help build communities. Yeah. And the Iowa tuition grant is sort of they're taking a flyer in you, making an investment in you. They want you to be successful. They want you to look at all these options you have. And as Gracie said, find out what you're good at, find out what you're interested in and good at. And this $6,800 Iowa tuition grant, that's sort of their investment. So, take that investment.
100%. We do have a couple questions. Heather Johnson asks, do you reapply for this grant every year, or is it automatically renewed through college?
Very good question. I should have covered that. You do have to reapply for it every year, the Fafsa, because your financial circumstances are going to change from year to year, or your parents' financial circumstances are going to change from year to year. I hear about this all the time. I didn't qualify when I was a freshman. I did qualify when I was a sophomore. Maybe a parent had a job change that changed their income, or you had a younger sibling that's now involved in the picture that has an impact on your expected family contribution. So yes, you do have to apply, fill out the FAFSA every year. The Iowa tuition grant is available for 4 years, or I think it's on a semester basis, actually, Gracie. So you're eligible for 8 semesters. I don't know if any of our schools are on a trimester system anymore, but there's an applicable period for that. So basically, you're eligible for 4 years, but you do have to reapply every year.
And going along with that, Carla asked, is the FAFSA and Iowa tuition grant for each year of college or just one time year? So kind of getting at that.
Yeah, each year you have to reapply every year. Again, because your financial circumstances are likely to change.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, if you have more questions, by all means, put them in the chat. As a reminder, Back on Track sessions are happening all week. Please check out the link in our chat to register for the other sessions you might be interested in. Samara just put it in the chat for you guys. I want to thank you to all of our partners that can make this event possible. You can see them here. Beautiful. But we especially want to thank Andy and his time and the Iowa College, I'm going to say this wrong, Iowa Association of Independent Colleges and Universities. The work that they do and the support they provide is wonderful. The access to the recording will be provided next week to school counselors in case you need it. And lastly, this Sunday, the Golden Circle College and Career Fair is happening from 1 to 3 p.m. in Altoona. If you're interested in learning more or attending, the link is in the chat. This is a great way to network with admissions counselors and employers. Andy, thank you so much. You were such a joy to listen to.
Thank you, Gracie. Delightful to be with you this morning, and everybody else too.
All right. Have a great day, guys, and hopefully see you again soon.
Bye-bye.